Welcome back to English Mindcast, my friends. Gather around, find a comfortable spot, maybe grab a warm cup of tea, and just listen. Today, we are going completely back in time. We are going to unearth a story that is much deeper, much older, and much more complicated than you might think. Have you ever wondered about Easter? We see the bright colors, the chocolate rabbits, and the painted eggs, but beneath those sweet, colorful traditions lies a deep, hidden history. It is a story of ancient magic, brutal empires, and a message that changed the world forever. Let us begin our journey. Imagine a bright Sunday morning in spring. Children are running through the green grass, laughing and searching for hidden chocolate eggs. Families are dressed in their best clothes, sharing big, happy meals. This is the modern picture of Easter. It feels safe, joyful, and completely innocent. But if we pull back the curtain of history, we find something very different. We find a deep and fascinating paradox. A paradox is a situation that seems to contain two opposite facts that are both true. The paradox of Easter is that this day of bright spring joy is built upon a foundation of deep darkness. The story we celebrate today did not begin with chocolate and pastel colors. It began with serious struggles for survival, with ancient rituals, and, yes, with terrible bloodshed. Bloodshed means violence and the loss of life. To truly understand this holiday, we have to be brave enough to look at its shadow. We have to look at the painful moments that shaped it. Our story is a puzzle made of three very different pieces. The first piece comes from ancient people who lived in fear of the dark winter. The second piece comes from a powerful, angry government that ruled the ancient world with an iron fist. And the third piece comes from a lonely hill in the Middle East. On that hill, a famous execution took place. An execution is the killing of a person by a government as a punishment. How did an ancient fear of winter, a cruel empire, and a brutal death turn into a holiday about bunnies and candy? How did these dark pieces create a day of light? This is the mystery we are going to solve today. It is a story that proves human history is never simple. Sit back and let your imagination travel with me, far back to the dawn of time. Let us travel back thousands of years. Imagine you are standing in an ancient forest in northern Europe. It is the middle of winter. The air is freezing. The trees are completely bare, and the ground is hard with ice. The nights are terribly long, and the sun only appears for a few short, weak hours. For these ancient people, winter was not just a season. It was a monster that brought starvation, freezing cold, and death. These people practiced paganism. Paganism is a general word for ancient religions that worshipped nature, many gods, and the changing of the seasons. The pagans watched the sky very closely. They were always waiting and hoping for a sign that the sun was returning. They needed to know that the warmth would come back to save them. Finally, a special day arrived in late March. This day is called the spring equinox. The spring equinox is a magical moment in nature. It is the exact day when the hours of daylight and the hours of darkness are perfectly equal. From this day forward, the light begins to win. The days become longer, the sun grows warmer, and the ice begins to melt. For the ancient pagans, this was the ultimate victory of life over death. It was a time for huge, wild celebrations. They celebrated the rebirth of the earth. Rebirth simply means being born again. The dead brown grass turned green. The bare trees suddenly grew fresh leaves. Animals woke up from their long winter sleep. The world was waking up, and the people celebrated with fire, food, and dancing. They did not know anything about the Christian story yet. They were simply celebrating the beautiful, powerful return of the sun and the survival of their families. As the ice melted and the spring sun warmed the soil, the ancient European tribes threw massive festivals. They wanted to honor the mysterious forces that brought the world back to life. One of the most important figures in these celebrations was a powerful deity. A deity is a god or a goddess. This specific goddess was named Eostre, pronounced Easter. Eostre was the beautiful goddess of the dawn and of the spring. In fact, if you listen closely to her name, you can hear exactly where the modern English word Easter comes from. The pagans believed that Eostre brought the warm winds and woke up the sleeping earth. But she did not just bring green leaves. She brought fertility. Fertility is the natural ability of plants to grow, and for animals and humans to have babies. After a long, deadly winter, fertility was the most important thing in the world. The tribes needed new crops to grow so they could eat. They needed their animals to have babies so their farms would survive. To honor the goddess Eostre, the people began to use special objects in their celebrations. These objects were pure symbolism. Symbolism is the use of symbols, like pictures or objects, to represent ideas or qualities. What were these symbols? The first was the rabbit. Rabbits are famous for having many, many babies very quickly. Because of this, they became the perfect ancient symbol for new life and strong fertility. The second symbol was the egg. An egg looks like a smooth, dead stone on the outside, but inside it holds a brand new, growing life. To the ancient pagans, an egg was a magical symbol of the earth itself, holding life inside until spring broke it open. Now we must leave the cold forests of Europe. We are going to travel south and east to the hot, dusty deserts of the Middle East. The time is the 1st century. The place is Jerusalem. It is a bustling, crowded city filled with ancient stone buildings and narrow streets. But there is no peace here. The air is heavy with tension and anger. The entire region has been conquered by the Roman Empire. An empire is a large group of countries ruled by a single powerful leader. The Romans were brilliant builders and soldiers, but they were also cruel masters. They demanded heavy taxes and total obedience. The Jewish people living in Jerusalem felt a deep, painful oppression. Oppression is when a powerful group treats people in a cruel and unfair way for a long time. The people of Jerusalem wanted their freedom. They hated the Roman soldiers who marched through their holy streets. They prayed every day for a hero, a savior who would lead them to victory. Because of this anger, the city felt like a tinderbox. A tinderbox is a small box of dry wood used to start a fire. It means the city was extremely tense. Just one small spark could cause a massive, bloody rebellion. A rebellion is when people use violence to fight against their own government. The Roman governors knew this. They watched the crowds nervously. They kept their swords sharp and their soldiers ready. They were willing to kill anyone who threatened their control. Into this dangerous, explosive situation, a simple teacher from a small country town arrived. His name was Jesus, and his arrival was the spark the city had been waiting for. Jesus did not arrive in Jerusalem quietly. He rode into the city during Passover, which was the biggest Jewish festival of the year. Hundreds of thousands of travelers filled the streets. Jesus was already famous. He taught about love, peace, and a different kind of kingdom. The common people loved him, but the leaders did not. The religious establishment was terrified of him. The establishment refers to the group of people who hold the power and control the rules in a society. These leaders had a fragile peace agreement with the Romans. They believed that if Jesus caused a riot, the Roman army would destroy the entire city. To protect their power and their nation, they felt they had to stop him. In the dark shadows of the city, a secret plan was born. The leaders formed a conspiracy. A conspiracy is a secret plan by a group to do something unlawful or harmful. They needed to arrest Jesus quietly, away from the large crowds who loved him. But Jesus was always moving, always surrounded by his followers. The leaders needed someone on the inside. They needed a friend to turn into an enemy. This brings us to one of the most famous moments in human history: the betrayal. A betrayal is the act of breaking someone's trust or giving them to an enemy. One of Jesus's closest students, a man named Judas, agreed to help the leaders. For 30 pieces of silver, Judas showed the armed guards exactly where Jesus was sleeping in a quiet garden. The trap was finally set. The peaceful teacher was now a prisoner. The religious leaders had arrested Jesus, but they did not have the authority to execute him. Only the Roman Empire could do that. So they dragged Jesus before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. They did not accuse Jesus of a religious crime. Instead, they accused him of a political crime. They accused him of treason. Treason is the terrible crime of betraying your country or trying to overthrow the government. They told Pilate that Jesus claimed to be a king. In the Roman Empire, there was only one king, the emperor in Rome. Anyone else claiming to be a king was a threat to the state. Pilate ordered the ultimate Roman punishment. It was a method designed not just to kill, but to torture and humiliate. It was called crucifixion. Crucifixion was the act of nailing a person to a large wooden cross and leaving them to die in public. It was a tool of pure terror. The Romans put crosses along the major roads so everyone could see what happened to rebels. It was a bloody billboard that said, "Do not mess with Rome." Jesus was nailed to a cross on a hill called Golgotha. The pain he experienced is almost impossible to describe. It was pure, terrible agony. Agony is extreme physical or mental suffering. For hours he hung there under the hot Middle Eastern sun. His followers watched from a distance, weeping and terrified. Finally, he breathed his last breath. The Romans took his body down and sealed it in a stone tomb. The Roman Empire believed they had crushed the movement forever. It was Friday evening. The tomb was sealed with a massive, heavy stone. Roman guards stood outside to make sure no one touched the grave. Jesus' followers were hiding in locked rooms, crying and shaking with fear. They believed the story was completely over. Their beloved teacher was dead, and their hopes for a better world were buried with him. But then came Sunday morning, the third day. A few women went to the tomb to properly wrap the body with spices. When they arrived, they froze in shock. The heavy stone was rolled away. The guards were gone. They slowly looked inside the dark cave. They found an empty tomb. The body of Jesus was completely gone. This moment is the greatest mystery of the story. The women ran back and told the others. Soon, stories began to spread like wildfire. People claimed they had seen Jesus walking, talking, and eating. They said he had beaten death itself. This is the story of the resurrection. Resurrection is the concept of a dead person coming back to life. For the followers of Jesus, this changed absolutely everything. Their fear vanished. Their sadness turned into unbelievable joy. The empty tomb became a powerful catalyst. A catalyst is an event or person that causes a massive and sudden change. This small group of terrified fishermen and workers suddenly became bold teachers. They walked out into the streets, unafraid of the Romans, ready to tell the world that light had conquered the darkness. For almost 300 years, this new Christian religion grew. It spread across the Roman Empire, even though the Romans tried to kill the Christians. But as time passed, a huge problem arose. The Christians could not agree on when to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. Some celebrated it during the Jewish Passover. Others chose different days. It was confusing and disorganized. Then, in the year 325 AD, everything changed. A powerful Roman emperor named Constantine became a Christian. He wanted his empire to be strong and united. He did not like the confusion. So he called a massive meeting of church leaders. This meeting was called the Council of Nicaea. Constantine wanted to fix the calendar and unite his people. At this council, the emperor made a royal decree. A decree is an official order given by a person with ultimate power. He ordered that Easter would always be celebrated on the first Sunday after the first full moon that follows the spring equinox. Do you see what happened? The leaders created a brilliant compromise. A compromise is an agreement where both sides give up a little bit to find a solution. By tying the date of Easter to the spring equinox, the Church achieved a massive assimilation. Assimilation is the process of taking different ideas or cultures and blending them together into one. The Church took the ancient pagan timing of spring and rebirth, and they filled it with the Christian story of the resurrection. They blended the old magic of nature with the new message of faith. It was a political and religious masterpiece. So, my friends, we have traveled from the freezing forests of ancient Europe to the tense, dusty streets of Jerusalem. We have sat in the council rooms of Roman emperors. Look at what we have discovered. The holiday we celebrate today is not just one simple story. It is a massive, beautiful tapestry. A tapestry is a complex picture woven from many different colored threads. The threads of Easter are fascinating. There is the ancient, biological thread of the pagans, celebrating the return of the sun, the rabbits, and the eggs. There is the dark, historical thread of a Roman death sentence, reminding us of human cruelty and oppression. And there is the bright, political, and spiritual thread of emperors and empty tombs. Over thousands of years, history has created a total synthesis. Synthesis is the combination of different ideas or things to form a new, complete whole. The pagans were right about one thing. Life does return after the cold winter. The Christians were right about another. Darkness and death do not have the final word. When you eat a chocolate bunny today, you're connecting to ancient tribes who cheered for the melting snow. When you see a cross, you're remembering a dark Friday that unexpectedly turned into a bright Sunday. All of these different stories, the spring equinox, the escape from oppression, the empty tomb, they all point to the exact same human feeling. They all point to hope. Hope is the deeply held belief that tomorrow will be better, brighter, and warmer than today. It is the belief that no matter how dark the winter gets or how heavy the sadness feels, the morning sun will always rise again. Thank you for sitting by the campfire with me today, and thank you for tuning in to English Mindcast.